Hello everybody, and in this IELTS Learning Tips video I want to talk about confidence, confidence for taking the exam. And confidence is like a sort of secret sauce or a secret ingredient, and without it, it doesn't matter how much practice you've done or how ready you are with your preparation to take the exam. If you haven't got confidence, then things can easily fall apart during the exam. And I've seen this happen quite often to students who actually were more than ready, but for some reason their confidence failed them. And quite often I see a lot of students going into the exam saying that they're not sure if they get it, they don't feel confident enough. And so you can see that confidence is something that you need to build into your preparation, and it really comes mostly from being absolutely prepared. So before we do that, I just want to remind you about my website, IELTSlearningtips.com, and also about my Facebook group, which is IELTS Band 7 and 8 Tips and Strategies. And I'd love to welcome you into that group. And on my website, you can also find free resources, as well as sign up for my newsletter and other things that I send out. And there are links at the bottom, and I have links at the end of this video. So let's look at confidence and what it means to have it or not to have it. So if you're well prepared and you know that you can get your scores, and that means that when you're doing your preparation, you are consistently getting the score or above the score, preferably, that you need to get the band that you want, then you should feel, you know, quite ready, and you shouldn't have too many problems in the exam. Those people who don't feel confidence, it's generally because they're not really well prepared, and possibly also because this is not their first exam, and that can really be a problem. So those are two of the things that can deplete your confidence, and here are others. So if you take too many tests, it does sap your energy, and it means that every time you go into the test, the next time you go into the test, you're going to feel a little bit scared and a little bit fearful, and that can sap your energy, and it can also reduce your confidence level. So taking too many tests is not a good strategy for passing IELTS. It's not the right methodology. What you should be doing is spending all that time and money, frankly, on preparing for your exam, getting the right materials, and perhaps even engaging an expert teacher to help you. It's a much better use of money than just to keep taking the test. Okay, this is another thing that people do. They will often book 2 or 3 together. I had one student who asked me today, I want to book 2 tests. I want to book them on the 11th and then on the 14th, I think it was. And I said, well, if anything goes wrong on the 11th, there's not enough time then to prepare or to change anything before the second one. And in my experience, if you have 2 tests very close together, what can happen is that either the second one gets a lower score, or they both get about the same score. So it's not a good idea, it's not a good strategy. It's better, if you want to book 2 tests, to have a bit of a gap in between, so that if the first one you feel is not going to get you the score you want, you've got time then to both prepare and build your confidence for the second one. But personally, I wouldn't advise you to book 2 tests at the same time. I would wait until you feel ready and then book your test and see what happens. Okay, this is what I mentioned before. There are lots of students who book a test, then start preparing, and by the time that test date arrives, they realize they are not ready. Or students who book a test intending to do a lot of work, and then find they simply haven't got time, or they haven't got the inclination, and so they go into the test not having done any preparation, or only having done a little bit of preparation. I've spoken to students who've only done 1 week's preparation. If you're looking for Band 7, it's just not enough. It's not going to be enough. The only people, in my experience, which is very long, who could go into a test like that after 1 week's preparation are native speakers, and native speakers who have good language skills, because not all native speakers have good language skills. There are many who are not good at writing and who are actually not even good at presenting themselves orally, i.e. in the speaking. So it's a risk, a big risk. And it's also foolish, because when you don't get your score, then this lack of confidence starts to happen. Okay, so this is another problem. I think it was Einstein who said that a definition of madness is doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome or a different result. So if you take the test, you don't get your score, and then you just go back and do exactly the same things you were doing before, chances are the next test will have the same result. You've got to change the way you approach. And finally, students who have no support, don't ask anybody to check their writing, don't ask anybody if they have questions or if there are things they don't understand, and yet still go into the test really not knowing what they're doing. And they are the big headless chickens, if you like. So all of these things will definitely take away your confidence. Okay, so we've said some of this already, that if you take too many tests, there's not enough time to prepare. And if you need to practice, you need that time. The only time I've ever told somebody to just jump straight back on a test was when they should have got the score, but when they went into the test, they did something silly, or they did something, in fact, this occasion, they did something silly in the writing, which they'd never done before. I've also had people who've done something in the reading, like start with the third passage, which is fine if you've practiced it, but they had never done it before. They did it first in the exam, and everything went out of kilter. They got all the answers in the wrong place, and it was a mess. And that's because they hadn't practiced it. And in those two cases, I said to both of those students, jump back in. And they did 2 weeks later, and they both got it because they were ready in the first place, and then something silly went on in the exam itself. So don't ever do anything in the exam that you haven't prepared. Okay. You won't have time to change. And I talk to students all the time about working with me on some of my courses. And if they've already booked a test, then there isn't really time. So I spoke to somebody just the other day, wants to work on writing, but she had booked a test for this Saturday. And I said, well, really, there's not much that can happen in a week. So it's better for you to just go ahead, do the test, see what happens. And then if you don't get the score, then we can talk again about you doing the writing course. So, you know, you really need time to change the way you're doing things, or you're going to get the same result. You won't have time to analyze. If you've got a test this week, a test next week, chances are you'll just do the same thing again. And no time to get advice and support. Okay, so when you get stuck like this, when you keep booking tests, I remember a few years ago I had a student who booked 6 tests in like an 8-week period, and she got very, very anxious. She lost all her confidence. And in the end, the first test, which sadly just missed her score by half a band, was the best score. After that, each test, the score went down and down and down because she just lost all confidence. So it's really not a good strategy. And she was in this vicious circle going round and round of test and test and test, and no time to change. Okay, so ideally, You should not book the test until you're ready. You should spend your time and money on preparing for it. Make sure you've got enough time, which again is don't book it until you've done some preparation first, and then you'll have an idea of how much time you need. If you have to book a test because you've got a deadline, and this happens, then make sure that you spend enough time on the preparation. So you'll probably have to do more practice, you know, spend more hours. But if you want your score, then that's what you have to do. Okay? Make sure you've got the right skills. You know, if you haven't got good vocabulary, or you can't do the reading, or your spelling and punctuation are up the spout, then you're not going to, you know, with the best will in the world, you are not going to make your band. Look at what you need to do in order to improve. This is all part of your preparation, and it does take time. You cannot do it overnight. And then get support if you need it. Most people do need some support. Or if you've taken the test and you're not sure how to change to get the band, then get support, get advice from somebody that knows what they're doing to move forward and change your band for the next time. And work on what will help you improve. Don't just work on everything, because that's not helpful. Okay. Oops. So if you don't get it, take a break. Unless, as I mentioned before with those two students, there is a reason that you know about, in which case it might be worth jumping back in. But if not, take a break and just forget about it. Some people, it might just be a couple of days. Other people might need longer. Then go over what happened. Now, a lot of students, the reaction is, I don't know, I've no idea. But then when I start to ask them, well, how was the speaking? Oh, well, this happened and that happened and I did this and that. And how was the writing? Oh, well, actually, I didn't have time to finish it, or I didn't have time to check it. And what about the reading? Well, there were one or two questions. So once you drill down and start looking at it, you'll find some things that you think you didn't do to the best of your ability. Okay, so the first thing is, were you ready for the exam? Were you absolutely confident and ready? And the second thing is, did you do enough practice? And only you can know this, but it is important that you're honest with yourself about this. Did you feel that when you went into that test, you would definitely get your score? Because in my experience, the majority of students don't feel confident about their score. What happened in the exam? Did anything go wrong? Did something happen? Did you forget something? You have to really think about it. Okay, now, the world hasn't ended. I know it feels like that when you've done the exam and you haven't passed. But there will be another chance. And in these few days when you take the break, or few weeks when you take a break, you need to also try and build up your confidence. So take time to do that. And one of the best ways of building up confidence is to get help and support from an IELTS teacher. Just the other day, I was speaking to somebody who'd just taken the test and not got the score that she wanted. And she'd taken it some time back, maybe 2 months ago. And she said, I just cannot face getting an IELTS book out. I cannot face even thinking about the exam. And I said, well, you know, that's understandable. And then after we'd had the call, a little while later, she sent me a message saying that she felt much better, and she felt now that she could get out her IELTS books and think about starting again. So sometimes just talking to somebody can help. Okay, and then go step by step. So if you manage to get all of your band 7s and you just missed one, like the writing, for example, then work more on that than the other things. But don't forget the other things, the listening and reading, but do more work on your writing, because you need it, clearly. If you missed more than one, so if you didn't score 7 on 2 of them, then you need to think about why that happened, if that's not consistent with your practice. Okay, so was it your English? Is it vocabulary that's causing the problem? Maybe in the listening or the reading, you didn't understand a lot of the words. So then you need to expand your vocabulary. Or are there certain questions that you always struggle with? And you had lots of those, like yes, no, not given, MCQ. A lot of people find these questions difficult. And if you had them in the exam and they were in more than one part, it can quite well cause a problem. Did you do enough practice? Be honest. If not, next time you know you need to do more. So take these step by step. So first of all, do a little bit of work on your vocabulary and then look again at the types of questions, etc. Don't try and do everything at once. If you've no idea what went wrong, then perhaps you were overconfident. You thought that you could do better than you actually can. Did something happen? It might be that you need to get somebody to talk to you and help you and show you where you're going wrong. Otherwise, it's just going to be back into that vicious circle we talked about earlier. And all of this takes time. Having a break, thinking about what went wrong, thinking about how to change your preparation so that you can work on the areas that you missed. All of this takes time. So don't go straight to the website and book your test. Take time to think about and work on those areas and then book your test when you feel more confident about it. Okay, so basically that's some tips on dealing with lack of confidence in the first place, and then the confidence you need to build up again if you didn't get your test result that you were looking for. Here again are the places where you can connect with me even more, and I would love to see you in either of those or both of those places. So the key message is don't book your test until you feel ready, and that will help you to be much more confident about taking it. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.